this may be a stereotype, but all of my male friends have not tried in any way to contact their birth families or to complete a birth search. And the majority of my female friends have. It might be more to do with the age than the gender. I think when you're a teenager and when you're in high school, everything's kind of a mess, and you're looking for something that you can look at and say, okay, this is something I know about my life, this is something stable. And I think a lot of adopted kids in high school look for that. Would you agree with that?
I do agree, and I also think that as kids get closer to 18, there are all kinds of things that they feel as though they must accomplish it right around that time.
Yes.
And sometimes search is the right thing at that time, but we see a lot of kids who begin at that age but really pull back and say, my life is so busy right this minute. So many changes, graduating from high school, moving away from home, going to college, meeting all new people, building a whole new life. Do I really want to factor in something as emotion-laden as a search at this time? So, the timing, I think, is probably more of an issue than if, because you'll know. Everyone knows whether it's right for them or not.
I think that's interesting too, because you provided a really good insight into what the search can do. And you were speaking about that because I remember when I was 18, I was like, oh, I'm gonna go do this and it's gonna be awesome. And then after my 18th birthday, I really was like,
I'm not gonna bother.
Listen, I'm going to school now.
And a few other things to do.
Yeah, I really did, and it's really sort of taken an immense backseat. I have a life that's outside of that. Part of, I guess, my identity. I guess that's how I would refer to it. That piece of my identity. But
I'm sure too that your adoptive parents gave you permission to go ahead and do it if you want to do it.
Oh yeah,
and see, that's how I'm feeling with my daughter. If this is what you want to do, it's fine with me. I don't feel threatened, and she can take it then as far as she wants to. And she can pull back her reins when she wants to.
Yeah.
And I want her to know that it's okay, hun. You can do this. We're not going to tell you that you can't. Whether she continues to pursue it or not will be up to her.
Right, and I think that is a very good approach to dealing with that kind of topic because my parents said essentially the same thing. You're free to do this if you want to do this. You have to do the work to do it.
Right.
But
to own it.
Even at the same time, they said, do you understand the choice that you're making? And I think that is important. Because impressing that upon an adopted child who's searching for their birth parents, understanding the choice is the most crucial part to starting that process. And I think that's, since I do understand the choice and I do understand what that means, that's why I want my life to be my life before I start.
Right. Because you don't know what you're going to find.
You don't know.
Yes.
Right,
It's
and
a
it
very
can
big
be
gamble.
It can be, a lot of things could happen. It could be not what you expect, disappointing, scary. I mean, we are going back to China where Colette was born as something that we think would be helpful and important. But I think everybody's different about what.
It seems to me that girls, going back to what Colette said about all her female friends looking and not her male friends, it seems that something about our society puts more pressure on women for a sense of identity, for inner strength, for something, and that's part of probably what they're looking for.
Yes.
What do you think, Adam?
I agree and disagree. I think it's not only just the society towards girls. I think males also have the the pressure of a macho man.
Yes.
It doesn't
Adam is
matter
concerned
to me.
about his
care.
hair.
Exactly.
Jesse's concerned about his hair.
Right.
Yeah.
but I mean, I think I think it could impact both.
That's
I
a
don't
good
think
point.
it's just necessarily girls. I think.
I think it has
That's a
two
very
very
good point.
different impacts on both of them.
But
I
they're
think
both
there's
big impacts. Yeah,
both
they're both
big
huge.
impacts.
Do you remember recently, was it last year, I think in 2012, the young woman who she had been kidnapped as a baby, and when she was asking her mother questions that the mother couldn't answer, and that led her to starting a search, and then she found out herself that she had been kidnapped
Right.
as an infant
That
from
was
the
I vaguely
hospital.
remember that.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. And then she broke the whole case, and
I
yes,
didn't
That's
know about
incredible.
yes, the mother was arrested
Right.
because the police or the legal authorities couldn't find her, and this child been kidnapped as an infant, and she was now 18 and a half, I
Wow.
think, when she started the search. Now I don't know how I would feel about that.
That
But
could
she
be-
has been reunited with her birth mother.
You know,
Well,
another
that-
thought about gender too is that, and this is just purely anecdotal, I don't know that research bears this out, but what we see a lot is that boys, young men, feel a lot freer when they're found to say, gee, no thanks, I'm really not interested in contact. Whereas it's really tough on young women from, again, a very anecdotal perspective, not at all research-based. Young women really struggle with that, when they are found by birth family. They really have a hard time. They're really conflicted about, do I owe them this? Is this something I need to do, whether or not I'm ready? It's somebody who needs me and something I have to respond to. Whereas young men, very often their response is, gee, no thanks, not right now. That's probably societal.
Focusing a little bit more on the adoptees, can you guys talk a little bit about the media and how you've seen maybe the media portray you in a way that isn't true to what you see yourself?
Well, I think that the story that we just told is a perfect example of that. I wasn't kidnapped. You weren't kidnapped. You weren't kidnapped. I mean, and that's. I think that we were speaking a little bit about this before, and I've spoken about this on panels before. That what you see in the media, what you see. People don't want to hear that I'm happy. This is great. I have a normal life. I go to work.
That
I go
doesn't
to
make
school.
the news.
Nobody cares about that. People care about oh my gosh, I get locked in a closet.
Distress.
It's
terrible thing.
I was kidnapped. Something awful happened, and that I think does such a disservice to adoption because when you watch TV, you watch shows that are popular with kids now. 16 and Pregnant. You watch like people watch Jerry Springer, Maury Povich. You can keep going. You can go on and on. Like every show is when they deal with adoption and when you deal with what it means. It seems to be that the media wants to say adoption is synonymous with pain. Adoption is synonymous with struggle.
That's such a good
But I
point.
don't think that's what it's about. Adoption's about love, and adoption's about sacrifice, and adoption's about allowing life to happen.
Everything that the media doesn't add
Right.
is what adoption really is. I mean, I
This is why we're doing this show. This is why Colette wanted to come and talk. I wanted to show that, we heard so much about this young woman, and this was a horrible story. But what about people? I mean, all the other cases that we know that work out wonderfully. So what are all the cons? What are some of the pros?
I was going to say.
Yes.
I think that.
You talk about the pros.
Do you mind if I talk about media for just
No,
a minute
no,
before? I'm
sure,
sorry.
go ahead.
Media is
Your
my
program.
favorite topic.
Go
I'm
ahead,
sorry.
go ahead.
About adoption. I grew up very, very involved in adoption and very, very involved, therefore, in media. And I remember when I was younger thinking, oh, Tarzan's awesome. Tarzan was adopted. Harry Potter was adopted.
I didn't know
Tarzan was adopted?
Yes,
I didn't
and
know
then
that either.
It's the go-to adoption movie. And then I started watching things like Dr. Phil. Now, Dr. Phil presents a very negative portrayal of adoption. He's actually quoted saying that all adopted children will have mental illness, and that's something you have to be ready to deal with. So for me, that's
said
extremely
all?
offensive. He said all. I
the tape
rewatched it a few times just to double check.
Oh my goodness.
And I was extremely offended. I don't think I have a mental illness. I don't know if anyone else here at the table does.
Pretty sure I don't. I hope
I'm
guess
not
you
diagnosed
could
with
tell me,
anything, and I
yeah.
think that the media focuses, as you said, extremely negatively on adoption. And they think, oh, we're all crying in corners, we're all super depressed and upset about what's happened to us because we were abandoned, but we weren't. It was a beautiful thing. Someone cared about us enough to carry us to term, give birth to us, and give us to someone else who they knew could care for us better. Like for me, my birth mother and father were probably living in poverty or underage, or in some other circumstance where they couldn't give me the best life I could have. By giving me up for adoption, they gave me a better chance at life. And that's an extreme pro of adoption, is you get to live a life in a community that's usually better endowed socially, economically. You have a lot more than you would have had in a situation where your birth parents had kept you, and you would probably be living in very poor standards in poverty. And so that's an extreme pro, the life of the child.
And you have parents who are so involved in your life and in everything that
my mother
you
is
do.
very involved.
Helicopter, I'm a helicopter parent. Yeah.
Oh, what does that mean? You hover? You hover?
Yeah, that's what the new terminology
Oh, she
is.
hovers.
She would tell me I was, so I might as well admit it.
Oh, I see.
Own up to it. Own it, Vivian.
What's
Own
interesting
it.
about that kind of topic that we're talking about is, is an adoptive parent any different than a non-adoptive parent? Is there a difference? I don't think so. When someone asks what's it like to be adopted, I usually ask what's it like not to be.
Yeah.
And how would you answer that? I don't think that someone who's not adopted would understand how to answer that question. Whereas
And
it's
personally,
Yeah, I was going to say, I think that what has always struck me, and that this is sort of, that people think they have the right to ask you very private questions about your family that they would never ask a person who had biological children, and that is one thing I have experienced and been quite amazed at.
Yeah,
what kind
talk
of
a little about that, because you and your daughter do look different when you when you go out. When she was younger, was that an issue? Did people come up to you and say, "Is that your child?" Or
Well, I mean, I can remember some things like being in the airport one time, and one woman, and I noticed, I will say that I think older people tended to do this more. I think younger people don't do it, which is good, because that means we're getting more educated. But I remember one woman saying, "Are they really brother and sister?" And I was like, well, yeah, they certainly fight like brothers and sister. And no, you know what I mean. And she was pushing, I mean, I don't really recall after that, but there were some occasions when those kind of questions came up, and it was very intrusive.
now let's hear from Adam a little bit, because Adam, you're the youngest in a large family. When you became aware of yourself, and you had all these brothers and sisters, and they didn't all look alike, how did you deal with that? And did you go to your mother and said, "How come Johnny doesn't look like me?"
Ever since I could remember, I mean, I'm the youngest of 7. My parents adopted 6 children before me, all from all over the world. So, I mean, I feel like my story may be a little different than my older siblings, but I was literally just thrown into it. So that's really all I know. But I like that though. Like Jesse said before, I mean, you'll get the questions, what's it like to be adopted? But I don't know what it's like to be not adopted. I mean, I've come from a huge family. We're all different. I mean, that's just, like I said before, it's just something I'm so proud of. I think it's awesome.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
But people do say to you, that can't be your brother, or is that your
Oh
real
yeah.
brother?
Well,
Those are the same kind of questions.
I've had going to school. My brother or sister would pick me up. They don't look anything like me, and I'd have friends say, "Oh, who is that? A babysitter?" And I'm like, "No, that's my brother." Like, no, it's not. It's like, it really is.
just to quickly go off that, can you guys, especially the two of you, talk a little bit about the word "real" in relation to adoption? Because I know that's a very
Well,
sore
I
love that
subject
word.
for
It's
everyone.
so funny.
I mean, real is whether you could touch it or not. I think there's a huge misconception, whether real or fake or none of that. It's either you have parents or you don't have parents.
Yeah, I think another common question, going off the real word, is, you know, don't your parents have their own kids? Well, what do you mean? Well, yeah, they have their own kids. Here's one, and here's another.
Yeah,
you know, it's interesting. You know, when people assume that, you know, people are, and I always say the blood's thicker than water.
Right.
You know, I don't think
Not
that that's
always.
true. Blood is not thicker than water, because there's no common blood here, but you're my brother, you know, you're my mother. So it's, you know, it's real. It is real. It is real.
Yeah.
There's nothing fake about it.
And I think it's interesting, the assumption that all these biological families have these close, you know, wonderful relationships, when of course we know that's, you know, not true. So it's interesting, the idea that this would be better or worse. It's just different.
Yeah.
And some birth kids are close with their siblings, some aren't. Some adopted kids are close to their siblings, and some aren't. It's more about the temperament and personality, and really, I feel very little about that birth.